Another variable in the amount of abuse that occurs in any relationship is the level of self-awareness in both people. Now, this is an easy thing to comment on, but what does it mean to be self-aware? What we're looking at is how much of the pattern of energy that an individual is participating in is conscious. So there is sexual energy. Is it conscious? There is emotional energy. Is it conscious? There is mental energy. Is it conscious? There are physical forces and dynamics. Is it conscious? There's migration from one area to another. My wife, when she's playing chess sometimes, starts to itch her skin because there's a certain state at certain times when playing chess elicits a feeling of helplessness because it begins to look inevitable that she's going to lose. Well, that resonance of helplessness ties in with childhood experiences of horrific helplessness. And it's not safe to feel those things as an abused child. And so she starts itching her skin. So there's a lot less abuse that occurs when we migrate and unpack that, when we understand that, itching, where's the helplessness? Where is it coming from? Can we talk about it? You see, if we bring it back into consciousness, the itching stops. Now, sometimes it stops because we stop the activity that's producing the helplessness. Sometimes it stops because we talk about the fact that this is a different kind of helplessness. That, yes, there's an 80% chance at this point in the chess game that you will lose the game. But you're not a loser. We're both winning playing a game together. We're both winning, sharpening our skills. So we're really both winners, even though within the paradigm of winning to connect and to play, etc., in this moment, you're losing. And so there's a dynamic there. And so we can also play with it in reverse, like in golf, there's a handicap. And so we can stop the game, we can bring it to consciousness, we can do healing work, or we can say, hey, here's a free queen. Now that changes the odds, so it's no longer a helpless situation, and let's continue playing, and I'll have a handicap, and so there's different ways of working with it. So self-awareness is 100% our responsibility, but a relationship can bring things to consciousness and accelerate that awareness faster than anything else can. Having someone check in, why are you blinking like that every time I bring up the topic of your father? What? I didn't know I was. You see, it brings it to consciousness. You have an observer. I remember a partner who would always fall asleep and get drowsy as soon as I brought up a certain topic. So obviously after that happens 3 or 4 times, I say, you're getting drowsy. And she says, I know, but you're getting drowsy because of this topic. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. So it's like, well, okay. So let's pick a time when you're going to be wide awake to talk about this topic. Oh, I'm too tired to think about that, you see. And so you realize, there's a coping mechanism in place. There's something that's not okay to be looked at. But that doesn't mean it's there. And much like black holes in the cosmic fabric, the black holes within the psyche, they may be invisible and partitioned off from the conscious mind within the culture, but they are the single most important thing to talk about because they keep influencing things. They bend light around them. And so you may not be able to see them and may not know exactly what, but they're having an enormous impact on the entire fabric of the universe. And these black holes within the psyche, these shadow contracts, these commitments never to look into this feeling, never to feel this feeling again, these dynamics within a relationship have a stunning impact on the relationship. And as you can participate in becoming conscious, you can not partner in denial, but partner in coming to consciousness. And your partner can be your friend, as they say. You know, you always steer this way when we get to this terrain. Oh. And it doesn't make any sense because the faster route would have been to steer this way. Oh. But you keep steering this way. So now you bring awareness to the pattern. So next time we come to it, notice what happens if you try and steer that way. Well, I need more coffee, I need this, I need that. Aha. So there's a new coping mechanism coming in to make sure that this doesn't come to consciousness, because there are so many ways to deflect and defend an area that we don't want to deal with. Your partner's hammering away at some area that you're determined not to feel. Oh, I know, I'll get fired from my job. And then when they say, do you want to talk about this? I can say, what? What do you want? You want me to get a job or you want this? Make up your mind, you know? And it's like, well, obviously get a job. Well, you know, you back off on this issue that doesn't ever get talked about. And so, okay, a peace is made. If we have to keep this as a black hole and never talk about it, but you actually have a job, fine. You know, I wish we could have both, but we certainly can't have both when you're in denial of the pattern even existing, you know, and so you have this dynamic. So, but obviously, when someone feels cornered, when an animal feels cornered because something is in play that's, you know, coming into being and they can't talk about it and they can't talk about not being able to talk about it. See, that's when it gets dangerous. It's fine when you can't talk about it. That's one level of resistance. But when you can't talk about not being able to not talk about it, then you've got inevitable conflict. Because the object will have influence. It will have gravitational pull. But it can't be talked about, and it can't be talked about that it can't be talked about. And so there's a denial that's so thick that you're going to bang into it. It's very much like if you imagine being out on the freeway and suddenly red cars are off limits. So the eye turns the dial, so how do you get red cars to be off limit and not be able to talk about it? Well, most likely you've got to turn off the color red because the brain is not so, sophisticated that it can say red is okay here but not okay here and stuff. There's some of that, but you just turn off the color red. Okay, fine, red cars don't exist. Now, does that stop you from banging into them, just the fact that you don't acknowledge that they exist? It doesn't make them vanish, but it takes them out of your view. As soon as they're out of your view, you hit them a lot more often, because a blue car, you acknowledge it and you slow down when you see a blue car in front of you. And a green car, you say that, let that car pass, and you partner with that car, and so it passes. But if red cars don't exist, you bang into them. You don't acknowledge what they're doing because you don't acknowledge they're existing, and so as they're trying to pass you, you ignore them and swerve into their way and cause an accident that way. So basically what I'm suggesting is that anything that is not seen, that is not conscious, does not disappear as an influence, does not disappear as a reality, but rather makes the reality more traumatic, more frightening, more filled with dread, because one part of you knows that it's there, and that part is interconnected with the part of you that is denying that it's there. So there's a conflict there that makes the world less safe for you and everyone else around. So you have a conflict there, and you know that that's not a very good situation as a status quo. So there's anxiety. This part says red cars exist. This part says it doesn't. Now, you can look at the conscious mind as a partition between the entire mind, between the entire ecological fabric of the universe, of all that is, because it's all connected. Meaning, this finger doesn't exist if the atom doesn't exist. An asteroid doesn't exist if an atom doesn't exist. Common ground, the atom. Well, the atom doesn't exist if there aren't certain, there's kind of various forces identified in physics, gravitational, the strong and the weak force. There's different forces there's inertia. And so none of this exists without those. Well, those forces aren't personal to you. You are a part of a pattern, as is everything else part of a pattern. But what the conscious mind is it's a lens. It's a binocular eye. Now, when you look through the lens, you close this eye, and you look through the lens, you don't see the entire universe. You see only what you can see within the lens. Who we are is much bigger than the conscious mind. But the conscious mind is only conscious of what's inside the necklace. This is me, that's not me. But this doesn't exist without this. If there's no body to hold up the frame, if there's no muscles and feet to carry me here, if there's no money to pay for the truck that brought my body here, if there's no money to pay Samsung to make this camera, if there's no money to pay Amazon to ship this backdrop, it doesn't exist. It's all linked to this moment. We've got different times present in this moment. These stones are between 40 and 200 million years old. They're in the quartz family. All quartz, 40 to 200 million years old. That's a big thing, and we wouldn't exist if 200 million years ago this didn't exist. They're both common to a planet. They have a similar origin. And we wouldn't exist if some thousands of years ago our African relatives didn't migrate. If they didn't do that, we don't exist. It's part of an equation. This minus this at this time plus 3 of these units minus these units plus these units equals this. This multiplied by 387 minus 2 divided by x, influenced by x, bleached by x, chemically treated by this, solar radiated by this, leads to this. This and this and this leads to this, and it all leads back to here. Which is why we are very unique as a culture in the 10,000 cultures in human history that pretend that we have nothing to do with the rest of the universe. I mean, we've got our heads so up our asses that there's debate within scientific circles about whether consciousness is real. Maybe it doesn't exist. Well, obviously, if it doesn't exist, then the conversations about whether it exists or not don't exist either, which makes the scientist completely irrelevant. Well, if you want to be irrelevant, just postulate that you don't exist. But of course, we do exist. And we're conscious of a very small part of our existence. And then the rest of our existence ripples out into a fabric that connects every single thing, past, present, and future, through a possibility field and a probability field and an actual field. And the actual possibility, the reality that I'm here talking to you now, exists as an actuality. The probability that I could be eating spaghetti with my wife, that I could be tickling my dog, that I could be taking a nap, that I could be talking about numerous other possibilities, that also exists, and this exists within the probability field. It's smaller. And the possibility field that I could become a physicist, that I could become this, that I could touch your son, your daughter in this way, that possibility field also exists. The actual exists within the probable exists within the possible. And then there's the known possible and the unknown possible, and that exists. But we're not conscious of it unless we turn that lens of the conscious mind to see it. But coming back into this framework of possibility, or in this framework of abuse, the more conscious we are, the more we see. The more we see, the more we can modulate, regulate, and attune our energy with what we see. The more we modulate, regulate, and attune our energy with what we see, the more smooth, the more effective the relationship and the less violent. Violence is a symptom of invisibility, of unconsciousness. So this is an important metric. Now, how do we do it? Like, okay, fine. The more conscious both people are, the better the odds that there will not be violence. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that if both of you paint something from your sub and unconscious minds on a daily basis, you're going to be more conscious of what's in that part of the psyche than if you don't. If both of you write a poem that emerges spontaneously out of imagination and see where it goes, you're going to know more about the landscape and language within your sub and unconscious minds than if you don't. If both of you write a diary, and a good diary that I developed in my early years was, this is what happened. This is what I think about what happened. This is what I feel about what happened. And this is what I'm going to do about what happened. I was walking along the street and someone banged into me. I felt shock. I felt angry. I felt scared. I thought, well, why didn't I see that coming? What else does that mean I won't see coming? What if someone raped me and I didn't see it coming? That's what I thought. And what am I going to do about it? I'm going to text a little bit less while I'm walking. Or it's okay, I'm going to text less when I'm alone in the woods or something so that I can feel safer. Or whatever the choice is. You know, that's up to you. That's the conscious mind's domain to choose what to do with this data. My partner looked at me with disgust again and said nothing. I felt confused. Why? What's going on? I thought this, that, and the other. What I'm going to do about it, I'm going to create a 1-hour container and I'm going to make a safe space for both of us within these guidelines to hear exactly what disgusts my partner about me, where that comes from, how much of it is based on reality and how much is based on projected reality. Meaning someone may be accurately disgusted by an event, but they may not accurately understand the backstory. So I've got an itchy nose, I pick my nose. My partner may see that and feel disgust. And what's the story about that? That maybe I don't have control of my body. Maybe that I don't have manners. Maybe that I don't care about other people. Maybe that I'm uncivilized. So these are the stories. And so we talk about this. And I feel disgust when you pick your nose because da 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 da. Well, how does that relate to my story? Well, here's how I relate to picking my nose. I get itches in my nose sometimes. Number one. Number two, I'm not ashamed of my body. Number three, the most expedient and efficient thing for resolving that itch is a finger. Number four, the actual physiological impact of mucus picked out of my nose and wiped onto a tissue. I've never had a single situation where something bad happened because I did that. Now, on the flip side, if I say, oh, I don't want to be judged by other people, so I'm not going to put my finger into my nose because everyone's going to judge me and come up with a story, I'm going to have an itchy nose. What happens with an itchy nose is about every 5 or 10 seconds, I lose track of what someone's saying because there's this itch in my nose. So my story is that I'm in an absurdly phobic culture that has pathologized all kinds of things about the body and I think is damaging the culture. And I'd like to be someone who reclaims the right of human beings to touch their nose with their fingers without shame. And I know it gets judged, but I've got the stamina and the courage to deal with people's judgments, and I want to be present for what they have to say and not worrying about a nose itch. You say, well, does that change the impact of the partner's projection from disgust to admiration? Or from disgust to fear? Wow, I didn't realize I was dealing with someone who's so outside the box. What else might they be? Now they're afraid. Would you, are you going to think this radically in all areas? Like, are you safe to introduce to my boss? Now I'm not disgusted with you, I'm scared of you. But the fear is based on an accurate story. I am scared of you because I know my boss is intimidated by this kind of thing and is likely to fire me because because of some of the things you say, or not promote me, or invite us to the clubs that lead to promotion and stuff. And so you are a threat to my career. That's an accurate assessment. Or it may not. You take it to the boss and you say, well, I've got a very radical spouse and I'm concerned, about how that will affect my career. I think I'm a great person. And I'm curious, do you think you'd be put out and intimidated by, a very radically thinking partner who's quite a nice and amazing partner? They're just, constantly coming up with unusual things. I want to be sensitive to that. And so you could invite me to some of the parties, alone when you don't want to deal with something radical. But if you think it would mix things up, my partner is going to always bring up some unusual way of doing things for some unusual reason. And it's fascinating. But it is not something you want to, bring when you want to smooth everything over. It's going to stir things up. So I respect you. I respect the nature of our business. I respect the nature of our business culture enough to include you in that. I don't want it to get in the way of my career. And what do you think? Now, your boss could escalate and say, wow, the kind of person who sees me like that, who understands this, who's got my back, and who can talk to me like this, that's the kind of guy that I promote. And so now the partner is no longer a threat to the career. Or the boss goes white around that conversation and it is validated that, yes, this is a big threat to the career. But now we've got an accurate migration from disgust based on a whole projection of things that aren't true to fear based on a projection of a number of things that are true. But now we've got an honest basis around which to talk about the issue. Because you can also then say, well, I respect that enormously, but the reality is that my boss is not ready for that level of integrity. And the reality is that I don't know a better job that I can get that would support our relationship. So I want to go solo to events, or I want to take an escort that fits in and create that presentation that makes everyone comfortable. Or would you mind doing this and not doing this when you're around my boss? You see, now you've got a partnering dynamic going on, and that leads to the next variable. That leads to the next variable, which we'll pick up on in a moment.